League of Women Voters is a non-partisan organization that neither supports nor opposes candidates or parties for any office. The League's purpose is to promote political responsibility through the informed and active participation of citizens in the government. Providing this forum also allows citizens to become better informed about the issues facing their community and to become better acquainted with the candidates running for office. We are happy to provide this service for our community. To send in the questions for the candidates, please text 224-306-9521 or email voter.lwvah@gmail.com. All of the candidates were contracted by email and phone prior to today. The candidates have agreed to abide by the ground rules provided by the League of Women Voters. They are as follows. Candidates have flipped a coin to determine speaking order. The moderator will rotate this order during the forum for questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their introduction. Next, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer questions. At the end, each candidate will have a 2-minute closing. League members will act as timers. Candidates will be given 30-second and 15 seconds warning, so we ask the candidates to quickly complete their thoughts before they see a stop card. Time limits will be enforced out of respect for all candidates. Questions will be provided by the audience. Each question will be answered by all candidates, so please, audience, ask questions that pertain to all. Again, we only use questions which can be answered by all candidates. Again, please send questions to 224-306-9521 or email voter.lwvah@gmail.com. Questions will be reviewed by League volunteers for clarity, appropriateness, and to avoid duplication. Candidates have been asked not to interrupt one another. The moderator will repeat a question if asked. The candidates are to speak to the audience. I'd like to introduce you to our moderator for today's event, Felix Garkisch.
Thank you, Louisa. We will now start our candidate forum. We ask that you bear with us and note that technology is what it is. We are all working our best to ensure that this runs as smoothly as possible. With me on screen, we have our candidates, candidate Sargis Sangari and candidate Jan Schakowsky. We also have our ASL interpreter, Stacy Shine Stapleton, and our timer, League board member Connie Wiseman. I would like to note that the Q&A and chat has been disabled for all attendees. So if you would like to submit a question for the candidates, please text this number, 224-306-9521. Once again, 224-306-9521, or email voter.lwvah@gmail.com. Now, we will start this forum with opening statements headed by candidate Schakowsky. This was determined by a coin toss, and the candidates have agreed to abide by the rules set forth prior to this forum. They will each present a 2-minute introductory statement. The order to start was determined by coin toss. The candidate who opens first will be the last to respond in closing. Then, questions obtained from the audience and vetted by our volunteers will be asked to each candidate, and they will have a minute to respond in alternating order. Each question will be answered by all candidates, so please, audience, ask questions that pertain to all. Again, we only use questions which can be answered by all candidates. Closing statements will be 2 minutes. League of Women Voters members will keep time, and candidates, I will ask that you please adhere to the time limits. Candidates, please notice the timer. When you see the stop sign, you may finish your sentence. We will now have candidate Schakowsky open first with her 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you, Felix. Thank you, League of Women Voters. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and happy birthday, 100th birthday of the League of Women Voters. Well, this is a time that none of us has experienced before. It is unique in American history. It is a time when at stake are our lives, our livelihood, and the life of our democracy is at stake. COVID-19 has really dominated lives for several months right now. We know that we hit a terrible mark this week of 200,000 Americans who have died, and now it's even more than that, who have died from the COVID virus. And we have nearly 7 million Americans who have been infected. And if you look for national leadership, you aren't going to find it. Though we have such a small percentage of the world's population, about 4%, we have the majority of all the cases, the deaths and the cases in the world. We also have seen at this time the effect of it on the economy. We know that there are about 15 million people who are unemployed right now, people who need food to put on the table. I want you to know that we have a very active constituent service operation, and the calls that we're getting are not like any we've had before. We have more people now, adults, weeping into the telephone saying, I cannot pay my rent. I cannot pay my mortgage. I can't afford the health care that I need and that my family needs. And I cannot put food on the table. Of course, we do as much as we can to recommend, answers to those questions. But this is a really challenging time. And as the League of Women Voters, I know that you're concerned about the challenges to our democracy and to equality in this country. We also have a crisis on the level, talking about the racial justice right now in our country. But also we have a president who is saying that we should just get rid of those ballots, those nasty ballots that could cause a problem in the election. We've never heard anything like that before. So League of Women Voters, we need you more than ever to make sure that people go out to vote. And I want to add one more thing, and that is, please, if you know anyone that has not signed up for the census, it is so incredibly important. For the next 10 years. The amount of money that will come to Illinois or anywhere in the country will be determined by how many people live here. So I want to thank you, League of Women Voters, for your service, for reminding people about the benefits of our democracy. I'm looking for a sign to see if my time is up. I think I'm just going to end there and say thank you.
Yeah, your time is up, candidate Schakowsky. Thank you for that. Candidate Sangari, you will have 2 minutes-ish because the technology is weird and you might not be able to see the sign to give your opening statement.
As like, don't worry, I'm not a politician, so I just make it simple and brief. First of all, Shabbat Shalom, Congresswoman, and also Shabbat Tova for you, especially on these high holidays for the Jewish community. May your family be safe in the coming year. Felix, Louisa, this is the reason why we do these things, especially for you, younger generation. Really, for us, is a matter of just holding the line as much as possible. It is really in your guys' hands to lead this country in the future. Hopefully, we've left something better for you. And that's what we've tried to do. I'm served 20 plus years in the U.S. military. 6 years of continuous combat operations. I saw a lot of my friends lay their life on the line. I saw young men and women like you all that were under my command who actually did perish, unfortunately, in the wars that we fought overseas. And frankly, their sacrifice is something that you all have to carry on with. And I hope that we're able to leave something better for you in the long run, because regardless of what the topics are going to be, what the questions are going to be asked, at the end of the day, if we haven't been able to turn over the reins to the next generation in an effective way where they could work together, reach across the aisle, regardless of their political parties, and work for the requirements of the Constitution of the United States, then we haven't done our job. With that said, there's 3 topics that are very important for my district, which is the COVID is major, but as I would say, Congressman on CDC says only 6% is what the numbers are ours. So actually, it's not true that we're leading cases for all the deaths around the world. The other piece I would tell you is economic prosperity, and also hopefully we can bring peaceful tranquility to our streets. So those are the three topics that the constituents in the 9th Congressional District are care for. And I, being a person in that constituency, that's what's important to me and my family. With that said, thank you, League of Women Voters, for giving us the opportunity. God bless. Let's see what the questions are.
All right, thank you, candidates. We will now start with our first question, and this will be for candidate Sangari. The question is, with the big drop in our GDP, how can we make sure critical programs are funded in the next budget? You will have 1 minute to respond.
Oh, you got to bring manufacturing back. First of all, economic prosperity resets everything. For decades, we started really sending our manufacturing overseas to China. And even under the medical crisis that we were dealing with, China was trying to take that manufacturing and use it against us. I mean, we fought against fascist nations like the Germans, and we fought against the Italians. They didn't control our manufacturing. Unfortunately, we're in a war right now on a national basis and on the global basis that is really being affected by these foreign powers. Bring manufacturing back, bring money back, get people employed, and you'll be able to address a lot of your issues. Stop wasting money on foreign wars. I have said that regardless of who wins the presidential election, whether it be President Trump or President Biden, they need to spend the next 4 years concentrating on America internal, because we need to reset ourselves if we're going to be a global power in the future.
Thank you, candidate Sangari. Candidate Schakowsky.
Well, we're not going to be able to improve our economy unless we get this COVID-19 under control. And the budgets right now need to reflect the need to do just that. We have offered what we call the HEROES Act, that would actually put money into making sure that people have what they need, that they have jobs, that we take care of them and not let the economy just completely fall around them. And of course, we do need to be producing products of our own. We have seen that during this COVID crisis, that we have had trouble with the supply chain because so many of the things that we need have been manufactured overseas. But I want to tell you that unless we get this COVID-19 under control, we are not going to be able to see improvement in the economy. The president has urged everybody to open up, to go out into a dangerous world, not even to worry about wearing masks. And so I think until that happens, and by the way, the more we spend right now to help our people, the less we will have to spend in budgets later on. So I am, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is your time. Okay, so our next question is, the head of the CDC recently said that wearing masks and practicing social distancing may be more effective than a potential vaccine. How can we get more people to do this? Candidate Schakowsky, you have 1 minute.
Well, it would really help if the president of the United States would show some leadership in his behavior and stop criticizing wearing masks and encouraging people to come to events that he sponsors and not wear masks. So while the scientists in the administration may be saying the right thing, the president is certainly modeling all the wrong things. Look, we know that if people were to wear masks, and not for themselves as much as for others, that we would see a decline in the number of COVID cases. And so it's very, very important that that message go out everywhere. And as much as we can get the president to wear a mask, to support wearing masks, all the better. But in the meantime, let's follow the science.
All right, thank you, candidate Schakowsky. Candidate Sangari, you have 1 minute to respond.
Okay, Sorry, I keep on having to mute and unmute myself. Look, the reality is a virus. Viruses morph and change as they are. No one is going to be able to tell you either way if something is better than others. Masks, do they work? Yeah, of course. If they work, if the science is telling you they work, then you should use them. Now, with that said, just a couple of days ago, new studies came out from science saying that because we have social distance and we have been wearing masks, that now the virus is starting to mutate. It's not becoming more dangerous, but it's starting to mutate to where it goes beyond those type of protections that we have put, to include the mask. So it's becoming more contagious. Look, we're in a position where we have to just react to what this virus does. Nobody's gonna, or we want to beat it, we want to defeat it, but nobody's gonna really know how it's gonna morph. The enemy has a say in this battle. Now, as far as I'm concerned, Americans are adults. Do what you have to do as an adult. I don't need government to tell me what to do. Just let me know what's going on, and I will do my best to be able to ensure that I keep everybody safe as much as possible.
All right, thank you, candidate Sangari. Our next question is, should climate action be a top priority? And what is your plan to keep all Americans safe from a changing climate? Candidate Sangari, you have 1 minute to respond.
So I've been asked this multiple times. Look, science on both sides of the aisle on this. You got to bring the scientists together. I'm a military guy over so many years. I'm not a scientist. I can tell you how to take a hill. I can't tell you how to affect climate change. So what I do as a politician when I'm in Congress, you got to bring the scientists together, take a look at what are they saying, try to look at the emerging technologies that we have, use those sort of advantages. They exist already. Private enterprise is not waiting for government to come up with a way of attacking this, and doesn't care about what Congress has to say. Private enterprise has already gone out there and has created the things that we need that might be able to help us with the carbon captures. So leave it in the hands of the entrepreneurs, build those businesses, support them, empower them, and look at the science on both sides and try your best to see what may work. Something that works today may not work tomorrow. So always be critical of every science that comes along, and try to ensure that it's not tied to special interests, but it's tied to the betterment of us as Americans. Keep in mind, there's 7 billion people out on this planet, and a lot of them don't agree with what we say from our scientific perspective.
All right, thank you, candidate Sangari. Candidate Schakowsky, you have 1 minute.
Well, there's really not two sides. There's one side. That we are running out of time to get rid of carbon emissions and to reduce them in and otherwise we could reach a tipping point where it's going to be hard to control. I had one of the most inspiring weeks this week, because I met with some of a few of the 21 young people who sued the federal government 5 years ago, the youngest now being only 13 years old. Called the Juliana suit, saying that their constitutional rights for life, liberty, and health are being violated because we are doing nothing right now under this Trump administration. Now, we have passed, just in this last week, a piece of legislation that would help reduce the carbon emissions. We'll see if we'll get anywhere in the United States Senate, but we have been blocked at every turn. But I believe that most Americans understand this has to be under control. You know, the fog, even sometimes we see in the Chicago area, is from the smoke that is coming from the west, and the terrible hurricanes that are in the east. It's here, it's now, and we need to act at this very moment. Right. And we need to do it not just for ourselves, but certainly for the children. And they're taking action, and we're following their lead.
Thank you, candidate Schakowsky. Just a reminder, both candidates have 1 minute time, and I just want to make sure that both of you are able to see that timer. Are we all good with that? There should be a method of seeing the timer called gallery view that might be more helpful. There's speaker.
I don't see one.
Should be gallery view and speaker view. There's 2 buttons in the top right corner that might say that. Just so we can make sure that we stay within the time limits.
If you hit the arrow, Congresswoman, is going to take you to where it says LWV timer, and that's what you're looking at.
There,
As long as you have that window open.
paint. Still don't really see the timer.
Use that blue arrow.
Oh, I see it now. Okay, sorry. Thank you.
All right, are we able to see the timer panel?
Oh, I got it.
Awesome. Okay, it's crazy how often we find new challenges. I am still finding them, even though we've been doing this for well over 7 months now. So, with that being said, let's get back into it. So we just had candidate Schakowsky answer that question, so that means that it's time to move on to our next one. Our next question is, in the latest report from the trustees of the Social Security and Medicare trust funds, it states that both programs will experience cost growth substantially in excess of GDP growth through the mid-2030s due to population aging. Do you think they should be fully funded? If so, how? And if not, why not? Candidate Schakowsky, you have 1 minute.
So Social Security and Medicare are the hallmark programs from the United States, beloved by all. It's really an easy fix, by the way, for Social Security, which right now, by the way, is being drained by the president because he's taking money out of the Social Security Trust Fund from the payroll tax. But we can raise the cap. We can ask wealthier people to continue to pay more into Social Security. Why shouldn't they be? And we can make sure that we fully fund Medicare to the point that we even include eyes and hearing aids, dental. This is the richest country in the world, and we can afford these programs. If it could be in the middle of a depression, they could have Social Security. We can certainly do it now to take care of people who want it.
All right, thank you very much, Candidate Schakowsky. Candidate Sangari, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, so look, Social Security has been rated by everybody. The unfortunate process is because we took it out of where we were managing in a department, and we basically allowed everybody to have access to it. So regardless if they're on the right or the left, Republican, Democrat, Independent, they're all sucking money out of it. So it will continue to bleed out. If you want to fix it, you got to put it under management where that management departments can actually follow it through how it's being used. And then that puts it back into the congressional control for oversight. And then once you have oversight, then congressmen now and senators have to be on the record to justify why we need to bleed it out. I think actually Social Security should have more add-on for seniors because our seniors are the ones that rely on it. And I think anybody else who's sucking money out of Social Security that doesn't fall into that category, you have to justify why we're giving money to them. And it cannot be on these socialist programs that people have come up with, which have nothing to do with protecting our seniors.
All right, thank you, Candidate Sangari.
Isn't there a way I can respond to that briefly?
Yes, just as a reminder to the candidates, you both have 2 rebuttals each, and those are 30 seconds. And if you would like to...
I just want to say that Social Security is not just for the elderly. It is an insurance program for all Americans. I had 2 grandchildren who lost their mother. And so they had some funds that certainly helped them further their education. People with disabilities rely on Social Security and certainly on Medicare as well. So we are lucky that we have a program that is an insurance program that actually increases with the cost of living each year.
All right, thank you for your rebuttal, Candidate Schakowsky.
Do I get a chance to rebuttal on that too?
You can rebut, but that will be counting as one of your...
oh, you get 2 rebuttals? Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. I just was going to ask what the definition of all Americans is, but we'll go ahead. I'll save it for another time.
All right. So with that being said, let's move on to our next question. And as a reminder to the audience, we always appreciate any questions that you have. You can text those to 224-306-9521 or email voter.lwvah@gmail.com. Our question sorters will review those, and you will have a chance to ask your question to both of these candidates. So with that in mind, let's continue on with the questioning. Our next question is, how do we ensure a fair and accurate census during this pandemic? Candidate Sangari, you have 1 minute.
I mean, look, I worked in the past for the Census Bureau when I was your age in high school, and all you could do is count the numbers. And you know, I've done it on my part, where I've gone in and fill out the form. It's simple; it's not that difficult. And then you do a follow-up to see how the process goes. It's a matter of just people answering the questions truthfully. If they choose to answer, God bless them. If they choose not to, that's their choice. I think we get a pretty good system. It's worked. I don't think there's any modifications that you have to do to it. Technology has allowed us to make it easier as far as accounting those individuals. But that's it. Count the heads and see who you have in the system, and then try to allocate resources in support of those individuals.
Thank you, Candidate Sangari. Candidate Schakowsky, you have 1 minute.
Well, what we've seen so far is that there are a number of communities. Some are doing very well and some are not. And it should not be surprising that often the communities that are not necessarily signing up are more low-income communities, immigrant-rich communities. People need to understand that you do not have to be a citizen of the United States of America to be counted in the census, because it will determine how much money. But meantime, the President of the United States has decided to cut off the census at the end of this month. Now, the good news, we'll see how it turns out, is that a judge in a district court in Northern California ruled that that was not legal. So let's hope that it continues, but we need to encourage everybody to do it. COVID has made it more difficult. We should end it when it's supposed to end, at the end of October.
All right, thank you, Candidate Schakowsky. Our next question is, will you work to preserve the rights of communities, states, and industries harmed by climate change to file lawsuits to make fossil fuel companies pay their share of the damages? Candidate Schakowsky, you have a minute to respond.
Oh, I think it's long overdue that we put a price tag on carbon. And we certainly do need to take action immediately. We've had lots of pieces of legislation that we've introduced. I'm on the subcommittee that deals with climate and the environment. And we have incredibly been turned back by climate change deniers, including the President of the United States, when you don't have to look further than the West Coast. We are seeing this incredible forest fires that are taking lives and are ruining millions and millions of acres right now. It is really hard to understand, and I feel especially obligated to the young people who know that this needs to be a habitable planet for human life. And that very basic premise is being undermined now.
Thank you, Candidate Schakowsky. Candidate Sangari, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, it doesn't help in California. We get people actually setting the fires, and there've been multiple arrested. You need to also highlight that too, Congresswoman. So the reality is, go take a look at it. It's open source. How many people actually started these fires? And some of them are tied to these so-called environmentalist groups that believe the only way you could do it, you start a fire, then you could turn around and you conduct lawsuits against these corporations. Look, I'll give you an example of Chinese Communist Party. CHICOM used COVID to move into South America. They purchased as much as they could support winning the particular mining that is mining driven specifically for our future technologies. When US tries to develop it internally, especially in the state of Texas, CHICOM gives money through legal sources to these environmentalist groups to be able to conduct lawsuits against those particular companies. China only cares about one thing, controlling future technologies. If that means that they control the iridium battery mining throughout the entire world, and they use our own processes against us through lawsuits and court delays, then we'll do so that in the future, you and Louisa, Felix, will be driving vehicles that are basically all controlled by Chinese interests.
All right, thank you, candidate Sangari. Our next question is, how will you support legislative solutions to safeguard scientific integrity and hold federal agencies accountable for ensuring science isn't sidelined from the process of protecting public health, safety, and the environment? Candidate, just making sure here because it's hard to keep track. Candidate Sangari, you have 1 minute to respond.
Look, special interest is always going to be part of DC, is a reality of it. If it wasn't, you wouldn't have incumbents that stay in this case, from the person I'm running against for 22 years. Special interest drives DC. As they say, money talks, BS walks. That's the reality of it. So the only way you could do it is to ensure that you break the back of special interests within Washington. And the only way you could do it is really, you got to vote new, fresh ideas, individuals with new perspectives. And I'm running. I'm 51 years old this year, but I'd rather see guys like you, Felix and Louisa, you all run. It shouldn't be where we have individuals who've been sitting in their seats for 20, 30, 40, 45 years. It makes no sense. You want to be able to affect it, and that's fine. I'm running to open the breach point for you all to come after me and run and bring new perspective to Washington. As long as that doesn't happen, you'll never be able to beat the issues that you just described.
What?
All right, thank you.
Oh, wait.
Very
Okay.
Candidate Schakowsky, you have 1 minute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. What was the question?
Sure. The question was, how will you support legislative solutions to safeguard scientific integrity and hold federal agencies accountable for ensuring science is not sidelined from the process of protecting public health, safety, and the environment?
Well, we have seen now that people who disagree with the President of the United States, their jobs are imperiled. Even the best scientists and best people in the defense arena and the intelligence arena. And so it's an attack on our democracy right now that we're seeing. And we have to reestablish the kind of integrity in our system that allows the experts and the scientists to be able to freely do their job, more than do their job, to lead us in the wise decision-making that needs to be made. This is imperiled right now. You know, we hear the president then just saying, oh, he didn't understand the question, or I don't agree with that, and undermining science at every single turn. We need a new president is what we need.
All right. Thank you, candidate Schakowsky.
I think I'm going to use one of my rebuttals here.
Go ahead.
Okay, look. The president said that he believes in therapeutics. The other side of the house comes up and says, well, no, we need to believe in science. So he says, okay, we're going to develop a vaccine. The other side comes up and says, no, the vaccine is dangerous. We have to have other checks. This is the reality of Washington. Nobody wants to work together. Nobody wants to reach across the aisle. The PPO office, the Presidential Personnel Office, has individuals sitting on it since Carter administration. You think those individuals care about pushing an agenda that is a new perspective on how science is looking at stuff? No, they don't. You got to clean Washington. You got to bring brand new perspective if you want to get anything done.
All right. Thank you, candidate Sangari, for your rebuttal. Our next question is going to be, what can be done at the federal level to protect voting rights and place standards on states? Candidate Schakowsky, you have 1 minute.
Well, I think we need to have some national standards on voting right now. We can see that because there are states that are trying to undermine the vote. There's even discussion about redefining electors by state legislatures. This is a serious issue of making sure that every single person has the right to vote. For example, we're trying to get national legislation that would say that every state should allow voting by mail. And it certainly shouldn't be undermined by the president, who said we just have to take away those ballots. And so I think there are national standards that we need to set to make sure that every citizen, every place is guaranteed the right to vote without having to climb over unnecessary barriers.
Thank you, candidate Schakowsky. Candidate Sangari, you have 1 minute.
Oh, look, there's every state has their own means and ways of running their ballots and votes, and when they vote, when they don't vote. A lot of it is programmed in to make it very difficult. Me as a Republican trying to run in the 9th congressional district, not only do I have to run in an open primary where the opposite party can run somebody against me to knock me out before I even meet their primary candidate, in this case, an incumbent with 22 years in, with a machine cranking out votes for them, in a general election. And then they allow me to only collect my signatures during the coldest times of the month. So they put it in a position where I don't have any time to do anything about it. And within 3 months, I have to run a primary. And this will happen regardless if I win November 3rd, right away, the machine is stacked against you. But you have various different viewpoints on voting. You even have a ranked choice voting now that is being implemented with some states. We just got to do what we can do is keep that vote, empower the individuals' votes. A vagrant on the street, the beauty of our nation has the same weight to their vote as the president of the United States. We got to ensure that he has a right or she has a right to vote.
Thank you, candidate Sangari. Our next question is, the pandemic has seriously impacted education at all levels. What can be done at the federal level to even the playing field so that all of our children have access to a quality public education? Candidate Sangari, you will have 1 minute to respond.
School choice. School choice is what everybody in the 9th congressional district I met with has talked to them about, especially the lower rung individuals that are on the lower rung when it comes to their ability to be able to get their kids to a school that they want of their choice. All my kids are in public school. They're in public school. I was a Catholic school student, but I can't afford to send my kids right now to public school. I have 4 of them. As long as that choice is not allowed, and you have families that are on lower income that do not have the right for school choice, which makes no sense to me, then you're not going to be able to get anywhere. So I should have a choice as to where I want to send my kid and what I want him to, and who I want him to teach him. It shouldn't be dictated by the federal government as to what the standards are. If you take a look at the standards across the board nationally, and I'm not talking about our district, we're not competing on the global standard. And that's because we're concentrating on things that have nothing to do with functional issues that you got to deal with on a daily basis to run your life.
All right, thank you, candidate Sangari, for your response. Candidate Schakowsky, you have 1 minute.
I think one of the most precious things that we have in the United States is that public education is, at least in theory, available to all. Right now, we have Secretary DeVos, who has, as Secretary of Education, who has really run her whole life opposing public education. What we need to do is to fully fund public education. And what we have seen is that public education very often has been starved. And I don't believe that any public dollars should be going to private education. If you want to send your child to a private school or to a parochial school, that's fine, but you're going to have to do it, because that is a standard that we set in the United States of America to even the playing field for all Americans, public education. I started as a public school teacher, and I believe in it.
Thank you, candidate Schakowsky. Our next question is, what is your plan to increase farmers' resilience to issues like climate change, corporate consolidation in the food industry, the revitalization of rural communities, and the protection of the legacy of America's farms and farmers? Candidate Schakowsky, you will have 1 minute to respond.
Yes, absolutely. We want to be able to help, particularly our small family farmers, corporate farmers, and the industry that they're part of has not necessarily helped our rural communities. And so what we want to make sure that we can do is to support our local farmers who are suffering from climate change right now. They often are the supporters that we have to make sure that the climate isn't ruining their crops. We saw in Illinois, we had months and months, months at least, that farmers were trying to get planted, and yet it was so wet that they were unable to get into the fields. And so the farmers have a huge stake in climate change, and we need to work with them on that.
Thank you, candidate Schakowsky. Candidate Sangari, you have 1 minute.
Look, I know this is like the third time climate change has come on, but when you got special interests, when you got Tricom companies tied to Chinese Communist Party that are being funded specifically here to really create crops that really destroy our annual crops, that's not climate change. That is not direct attack against us. You want to fix the issue? It's very simple. Bring your manufacturing back, ensure that you provide a backbone for the farmers, and ensure that these so-called special interests that have been absolutely gutting us at the federal level, because they all have their hands in the pockets of the congressional leaders, that they do not create the type of crops that are created only for their better interest by destroying the actual seeds that we've had for years here that have allowed our farmers to be successful. So there's a lot of machine politics in the process that is allowing foreign processes to come in that are really attacking our farmers' capability to create what we want, which is the better nutritional foods that you, Felix, and Louisa are counting on. That's the reality of it.
Thank you.
Get the special interests out of it.
Our next question is, sorry, it's a lot of stuff going on here at once. What actions would you propose to support, what actions would you propose and support to address the racial divide? Candidate Sangari, you have 1 minute to respond.
I don't know if there's a racial divide. It depends on your perspective, right? Look, I'm an immigrant. I came to this country. I'm a person of color. I'm running against an incumbent who's been here for 22 years. I didn't know yes or no. I couldn't speak a lick of English. I learned, I became very successful. I applied myself, became part of the fabric of this nation, Letterman winner in high school. I applied my trade with serving the nation for 20 years in combat. I had to fight 2 medical boards just to get back to be in the fight, where I was blown up my first time 7 times on range. I served in a diplomatic mission. I came here today. Now I'm trying to apply that trade craft, what I've learned, lessons learned on the ground, as an Assyrian born in Iran, to Congress. Tomorrow, the machine that is looking at the polls, if the polls get anywhere close, they will absolutely dissect me. They will find anything possible to make sure I'm destroyed. If I win in November 3rd, the election, they'll find ballots over the next 14 days to make sure that I get knocked out. That's just a reality. So how do you want to fix the racial divide when you don't allow individual immigrant communities to have a say in the 9th Congressional District?
Right,
that's your perspective.
Thank you. Thank you, candidate Sangari. Candidate Schakowsky, you have 1 minute to respond.
I think that the country has really awakened to the problem of racial injustice, particularly in our the system of laws and policing. Because of all of the protests that arose from the murders that have occurred, including in our own community, with Jacob Blake we saw it on television, being shot 7 times as he was walking away to the car where his children were. And so we passed a bill, the Justice in Policing Act, which was never on the agenda until people in their protests said we have to do something. And we passed that in the House of Representatives to ban chokeholds, to stop no-knock warrants, to end the qualifying immunity that gives officers an opportunity to escape any blame. So we're doing things.
Thank you, candidate Schakowsky. Our next question is, what is your position on the topic of school choice and the president's need to use executive order to ensure that American history is taught in schools? Candidate Schakowsky, you will have 1 minute to respond.
Well, actually, I think the president was trying to say that he thinks that the schools are infected with some sort of left-wing ideology. And so he wants to impose on the schools a certain curriculum, which fortunately is not going to happen because the president doesn't have that authority to do it. So I am not in favor, I'm in favor of school choice, but I'm not in favor of using taxpayer dollars to have students go to outside the public school system, because I think it is so essential. And I am certainly not for the president of the United States being able to dictate any kind of curriculum that would that where his worldview would become mandatory in the schools.
Thank you, candidate Schakowsky. Candidate Sangari, you have 1 minute.
Yeah. The congressman has even signed on legislation that has taken taxpayer dollars and spent them overseas. So I don't see why we cannot use them on Americans who want to have a school choice. If I want to send my kids to a certain school and I want to send them in a school that I know that they're going to be part of a gang, they'll be under pressure, they won't be able to be successful, maybe the teachers are not capable, maybe the school hasn't made the requirements to meet the grade, then why should I not have the opportunity to go somewhere else? What's wrong with that? I'm giving that's my taxpayer dollars that I give. As Colonel Sangari, who's paying taxpayer dollars into the system, I'm okay with the president taking my taxpayer dollars, give them to a young man or woman from the south side of Chicago to have a school choice to go to the school of their wants and desires. There's nothing wrong with that. And I'm the taxpayer. So I commend them. It should have been done at the legislative level, but legislators are too busy arguing with each other than working together to get these issues resolved.
Thank you, candidate Sangari. Our next question is, what specific actions will you take to reach across the aisle? Candidate Sangari, you have 1 minute to respond.
It shouldn't be what action I'm going to take to reach across the aisle. I've done this for my whole life. I've served under Democratic, Republican presidents. I've always said, yes, sir, continued on. When I started in the Erie Center for Strategic Engagement, I actually briefed the previous administration on the issues that we're dealing with. I remember when the commander of the Syrian forces came in and said that we need help from the Obama administration. I said, you're going to get zero support from them. I said, but what your job is, you go do what you need to do to protect the root of Christianity on the ground that is being killed and dissected where he's not supporting you. And then we'll still work through the system. I never got up and wrote a book about how the Obama administration hasn't helped us. One day, maybe it will be written. You'll be shocked what they could have done for us that they failed to do. But I'm also a Republican. I have supported individuals who have been Democrats running, working actually with the current incumbent. That she was mentoring them that were running as Democrats because I thought it was important for us to have new voices from our community. I supported them. I stood on street corner and passed out their flyers. I've done it for most of my life. So it's easy for me to go in and strike new deals. But if you're an incumbent and has been there and you have never been able to reach across aisle, you're not going to be able to upgrade that software and make changes.
Thank you, candidate Sangari. We will have just a couple more questions as we are nearing our time here. Our next question is, what is the...
Did I answer that question?
I apologize. I totally messed up there.
Reaching across the aisle.
Yeah, the question again, just to repeat, is what specific actions will you take to reach across the aisle?
Two things I want to say. One is I've been there for, this is my 11th term, and until now, that was not a hard question to answer. I passed all kinds of legislation on child safety and product safety, the women, peace and security legislation that was passed into law, and I have introduced a number of bills this session that are bipartisan, mostly dealing with healthcare and the cost of prescription drugs. But when you have a situation where the Republicans have absolutely said no, the only thing in the Senate that they've been interested in is approving judges, and that's at the extreme right now, it has become very, very difficult. This is new. It is not something that's been going on. I've served mostly in the minority and mostly being able to work across the aisle. And I've been able to do it somewhat, but it's hard to pass bills bipartisan in this session with Donald Trump as president.
Thank you, candidate Schakowsky.
If I could use my last 1 minute piece on this, because I think it's very important. Out of everything,
Sure.
we spoke about, you got to work across the aisle, and it's not Democrat, Republican. These are two vehicles, folks. Republican wears a red, Democrat wears a blue. Okay, these are two vehicles to get into Congress. That's all it is. There is nothing special about it. I align more as a Republican than as a Democrat. At the end of the day, if you want to fix the things for America, you cannot go in there and constantly punch the other party in the face. Say the president is this, the president is that from this party, the Republicans are doing this. Oh, by the way, I can reach across the aisle. No, you can't. Look, I'm never go to listen to anything I've said. I haven't attacked the current candidate that the Democrats have put in for the presidential side of the House, because one day I may have to work with him. Come November 3rd, if he wins, I'm going to have to reach across the aisle to work with that individual. Learn to develop diplomatic language to work together. Stop hitting each other constantly.
All right, so now on to the last question, which is, what is the role of the federal government in making sure state redistricting provides a fair and equitable result for voters? Candidate Schakowsky will have 1 minute to respond.
So the Voting Rights Act, which has now been amended, unfortunately, made it very clear that there were certain states that were discriminating against making sure that redistricting was done correctly, that minorities were properly represented. John Lewis, many times, almost gave his life to make sure that that was done in an equitable way. Unfortunately, again, the current Supreme Court, with its majority, was able to change that so that states that had been guilty of violating the Voting Rights Act now would be able to be without the kind of scrutiny that they had had before. This was, I remember John Lewis and the pain that he felt after all the work that he had done to get the Voting Rights Act passed in a way that assured equality. So we need to go back to it.
Thank you, Candidate Schakowsky. Candidate Sangari.
Yeah, as long as you got gerrymandering and is run by one party, whether it be Republican or Democrat, in this case in Illinois is run by the Democrats, you'll never have true representative democracy in our nation. We have a cemetery, a Jewish cemetery in our district, where one of my buddies has two parents buried there. That cemetery is divided between the 10th and the 9th. How the heck do they gerrymander a cemetery that gets divided between 10th and the 9th? Why? So half of the dead people can vote in the 10th, half of them in the 9th? I mean, seriously, it has become ridiculous. And the fact that as long as you have this, and both Republicans and Democrats are at fault for it, don't get me wrong, as long as this, we're never going to have a true ability to have young men and women like you, Felix or Louisa, to be able to run and actually be able to knock out incumbents who sit in their office for so many years. I have all the talents possible. Look what I have to go through. Imagine what a young man and woman has to go through to knock out the incumbents from the two parties.
All right, thank you, Candidate Sangari. That is all the questions that we have time for today. So I would first like to, before we get to the closing statements, thank the both of you for taking these questions from the audience. It just goes to show that the quality of this race is still very, very high, and it goes to attest to the character of the constituents in this district, that they are willing and able to engage in the democratic process in this way. So with that being in mind, let us get on to the opening statements. Since Candidate Schakowsky was able to go first, or closing, yes, thank you. Since Candidate Schakowsky was able to get to the opening statement first, she will be going second, and Candidate Sangari will be starting off the closing statements. So Candidate Sangari, you have 2 minutes to make your closing statement.
First of all, I have to tell you, when you start the political process, you're so disappointed because you see so much absolutely filth and garbage in it. And then we run across young men and women like you, Felix, and I feel pride that America's in the good hands. And I say that because really all I'm doing is trying to set the standards for the future generation, and I hope that I've been able to teach the future generation based on how I've conducted myself in combat, how I've conducted myself professionally at all levels, that I have been able to at least be that standard bearer for how we need to work together. This country needs two parties, but it needs a constitution. We cannot take the constitution, toss it away, and melt away into tribalism, where one tribe picks up a flag of a donkey on the other one an elephant, and we just throw stuff at each other. It doesn't work that way. We're Americans. We got to work together as much as possible to ensure that the ideal that our founders established is an ideal that we all preserve. And frankly, do what my friends did and I did when my buddies laid their life on the battlefield. I am an immigrant, a person of color. I understand what immigrants go through. I am an Assyrian and Iran born, and we have to deal with Iran in the future. My best features or capabilities are in foreign policy. Go read what I've written on Japan Forward. Go read what I've written on Daily Herald. Go take a look at the necse.net, our historical files from the Near East. But also at the same time, I am a father. My wife and my kids are my heart and my love. And I want to make sure that they have the best opportunity to be successful. I cannot guarantee success for them, but I want to give them the best opportunity to be successful. And I want to do the same thing for future people of color who may hopefully get a chance after this election to be able to be there. Vote me in, and if I don't meet your requirements, vote me out in 2 years. It's not that difficult. God bless you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Candidate Sangari. Candidate Schakowsky, you have 2 minutes to make a closing statement.
Thank you so much. It's really been an honor to be here once again with the League of Women Voters and to have this opportunity to have a conversation with my opponent as well. Let me just say that I believe that we have an opportunity of a lifetime in 30 some days, November 3rd, the election, to decide what kind of country we want to be. I think the fundamentals are on the line right now. My opponent mentioned the Constitution. I really think that we have a president right now who has no regard for the Constitution of the United States. And we have to get back to the normalcy of abiding by the Constitution, but we also do have to create more and more diversity in who represents this country. Age is one of those things, and certainly when we talk about ethnicity and race. But I am so proud that in the House of Representatives, we now have over 100 women that are there. We have younger people that are there. We have the first two Native Americans, women in the Congress in the House of Representatives, Democrats. We see much more diversity and we see much more youth. I have really made it my mission in these years to encourage young people, young women, young men to run for office, for every office, from school board all the way to the Congress of the United States. And I will continue to do that. But we have a chance November 3rd. Everyone needs to get out to vote to make sure that we have a country we can be proud of.
Thank you so much to the both of the candidates. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to answer these questions from the audience and offer up your perspectives. I will now pass it off to Louisa.
Thank you to Felix for being our moderator. Please make sure to register to vote, make your plan to vote, and then make sure your voice is continued this election day. Need help? League of Women Voters, Arlington Heights, Mount Prospect, Buffalo Grove is here to help. Check out our website at www.lwvah for voter registration information. Yes, you can register online. Mail-in vote information, secure Dropbox secure Dropbox locations, planning your ballot, those judges matter, as well as your early and day polling locations. And for any of you looking to support this year's election to make sure it's safe, secure, and accessible for all, we even have a link where you can sign up to be a poll worker and earn a little extra cash. Students, it's a day off school. Again, check us out at www.lwvah.org and follow us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We even have accounts specifically for youth at student.lwvah and our mascot at Pause for Votes. And make sure once you're ready to vote, you tell 10 friends where they can find all the information they need to be counted. www.lwvah.org. We are grateful to you for joining us and to our candidates, candidate Schakowsky and candidate Sangari, for our democracy relies on citizens willing to run for office, and to our ASL interpreter, Stacy Shine Stapleton, and to all of the volunteers of our league who work tirelessly to bring you this free program. Have a great day.
Outstanding. God bless. Keep it up, guys.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
especially.
Thank you.